Welcome back to the last morning of OW2con 21. This morning we have two sessions, one on developer tools, the second on open cloud, and we will close the conference with the ceremony for the OW2con 21 Best Project Awards. So we are kicking off this session on resources and technologies for the developers with a presentation by Alexandre Lefebvre of UCLSoft about ReachOut. ReachOut is a platform that we have developed at OW2 to help projects implement beta testing campaigns. And we've just recently launched a beta testing fest or test fest for which Alexandre will give the results.
Hello, I'm Alex from UCLSoft. This presentation will explain what ReachOut is all about. Then I will focus on the recent ReachOut Test Fest contest. If you're watching this live, you can join the dedicated presentation chat on Rocket Chat and ask your questions there. Check the OW2 Online chat for the link to the dedicated chat. ReachOut is a 3-year coordination and support action funded by the European Commission. It started in January 2019 and will end at the end of this year. Fraunhofer Focus coordinates the project, and the other two partners are OW2 and UCLSoft. Our goal in ReachOut is to help European research projects, but also European SMEs and any open source project develop market value and reach out to their end users by developing their own beta testing campaigns. A bit of context. Creating value for projects means more than simply producing software and project deliverables. This is what we call the delivery challenge. There are many more project attributes, which are listed on this slide, which create value for project results. As we will see, beta testing helps developing those product attributes, and thus it increases the market value of the project. Beta testing is a key phase in a software development cycle. After the initial alpha version, which is internal to the project, and before the product is ready, the beta version is to be tested by external end users over a short period of time. This is what a beta testing campaign is about. Beta testing has many benefits. The most obvious ones are that beta testing provides feedback, which can be used to increase the quality of the product. Feedback provided by external beta testers is also very useful to identify future exploitation opportunities of the project results. Less obvious, beta testing provides a focus point that helps align the efforts and the expectations of all the project partners. And finally, beta testing helps enforcing those other necessary product attributes, such as documentation, packaging, support, and thus it increases the overall project value. We like to say that for a project to be able to develop and implement its own beta testing campaign is an important milestone. It proves that the project has what it takes to engage with external actors, users, partners, to bring value to the market and to start developing its own ecosystem. The ReachOut team is available to help projects define, set up, and execute their beta testing campaigns. We provide you with a methodology, a set of tools and templates, as well as support during the whole time frame of the campaign. Also, ReachOut can provide gifts for beta testers, and we have organized the Test Fest. Before I go into more details, please note that all the services provided by ReachOut are completely free. So, at ReachOut, we have developed a whole 5-stage methodology to help you implement your own beta testing campaign. This means deciding the objectives of the campaign and the roles of each partner, then preparing the software for beta testing, the testing scenario and the questionnaire, writing the documentation and communication material, engaging with the beta testers themselves and managing them, and finally, analyzing the results and sharing them. The methodology is available in detail on the ReachOut website. So we have developed all the necessary tools and templates for each of a campaign building block. Those are available in what we call the ReachOut Beta Center. Let's now go into more details. Campaign managers can self-register on the ReachOut Beta Center. They are given their own campaign manager page from which they can access the resources provided by ReachOut. The campaign manager enters all the campaign details in a form provided on the ReachOut Beta Center. This includes the description of the campaign, the expected testing duration, the target profile of expected beta testers, the campaign start and end dates, the requirements for beta testers, the testing scenario, links to installation instructions and documentation, as well as the incentives for taking part in the beta testing campaign. From this form, a campaign page will be generated automatically, together with the associated questionnaire for beta testers, as well as a dedicated mailing list. ReachOut also provides campaign managers with a monitoring dashboard. This dashboard contains 24 checkpoints, which are about the management, the preparation, and the execution of the campaign. The monitoring dashboard can be used as a checklist. It can also be used to monitor the progress of the campaign together with the ReachOut project team, or to communicate with the partners and the reviewers. When a campaign is created, the ReachOut Beta Center generates a questionnaire, which is based on a template containing a balanced mix of 34 opened and closed questions. The questions are organized in sections, respectively about setting up the testing environment, functional feedback, user experience, possible next steps, a general summary, and finally the beta tester profiling. The questionnaire is entirely customizable. You can remove questions, reword questions, add questions. It also supports multiple languages for multilingual questionnaires. For each feedback returned by a beta tester, the campaign manager receives an email message. Responses can also be visualized online, including statistics and graphs. They can also be exported in various formats. The ReachOut Beta Center also provides other tools. Those include templates for documentation, recommendations for packaging, as well as a packaging tool, the ReachOut Factory, a communication package with several templates, fine prints, and a reporting package. So typically, a beta testing campaign can take between 3 to 5 months, depending on how ready you already are and how much efforts will be required to attract the beta testers. The first phase of preparation takes usually 1 to 2 months. Then you can count 1 to 2 months for the execution itself. That means engaging with the beta testers. And finally, 1 month for analyzing the results. The task of recruiting beta testers starts with your project and your own ecosystem of partners. Students are often a good source of beta testers. ReachOut also provides you with its own ecosystem, including previous projects who have used ReachOut for their own beta testing campaigns in the past. And by being part of the ReachOut ecosystem, you will also be able to help other future projects by participating in their campaigns. We also have a newsletter, social network presence on LinkedIn and Twitter, and we can help with promotion material. Incentives are an important point to attract beta testers. They could be your own goodies, if you have any. ReachOut has set up a Hall of Fame where the beta testers, if they agree, can be listed in recognition for their efforts. And also, ReachOut provides monetary rewards to beta testers, as well as an end-of-project prize. Also, in order to promote beta testing campaigns further, we have decided to organize an event called the ReachOut Test Fest. It started on the 13th of April and ended on the 13th of June. Beta testers were encouraged to participate in as many beta testing campaigns as possible. Beta testers have benefited from each campaign's incentive, including appearing on the Hall of Fame, receiving possible goodies from projects, and the ReachOut monetary rewards. The most active beta tester with the highest number of completed questionnaires and useful suggestions has now been selected. Let us reveal the award winner.
The winner of the ReachOut Spring Test Fest is Christobal, a beta tester who wishes to remain anonymous. Thanks to Christobal's participation in the Test Fest, valuable feedback was provided through complete questionnaires. Thanks for your participation and congratulations.
The good news is that we have decided to organize a second edition of the ReachOut Test Fest in September and October this year. So if you have ideas of beta testing campaigns for making your project results available for beta testing, it is now the right time to get started in order to be ready for the Autumn Test Fest. So how do you get started? Well, the first step is to go to reachout-project.eu, self-register and register your project. Then we will get in touch with you, go through the ReachOut methodology, assess your needs, and help you implement, promote, and run your beta testing campaign. And remember, this is all for free. I hope you have enjoyed this presentation, and I expect to see you soon on ReachOut. Please don't hesitate to contact the ReachOut project team if you need any help. Thank you.
The next presentation is about the Decoder project. Decoder is a research project in which OW2 participates, and that develops a suite of tools that helps developer teams and developers collect knowledge that is embedded inside an application. So this helps onboard new developers or new maintainers for the applications. And the presentation is given by Virgil Prevosto of CEA List.
Hello, and thank you for attending this presentation of the Decoder platform for software analysis. I'm Virgil Prevosto from CEA List in France, and I'm acting as technical leader of the Decoder project that I'm about to present. In a few words, Decoder is an Edge 2020 project started in January 2019, meaning that we are now nearing the end of the project. Its main aim is to provide a unified platform, the Persistent Knowledge Monitor, or PKM for short, for holding and managing all types of documents that are used throughout the lifecycle of a software system. This includes, for instance, design and requirements documents, the code itself, of course, its comments, user manuals, formal specifications, if any, test and static analysis reports, and so on. As I said, the PKM is meant to be used along all the phases of the software development cycle, and for reflecting that, three main roles have been identified. Developers who need to write the code, reviewers who assess whether the code is fit for release, and maintainers who have to come back at the code base sometime later, sometimes much later when little information is still available for the code. In order to accommodate their various needs, some work in Decoder has been dedicated to propose methodological guidelines supported by a convenient user interface and deployed over a set of use cases. Finally, there are two main categories of tools that are meant to interact with the PKM itself. On the one hand, software engineering tools, static analyzers, test case generators, modeler, and so on. And natural language processing tools for finding correspondences between the various documents put into the PKM. Since it is supposed to handle very heterogeneous sets of documents, at its heart, the PKM itself is a document-oriented database, namely a MongoDB instance. On top of MongoDB's JavaScript API, the PKM core API provides very low-level functionalities for managing the database. It can be accessed directly from the command line, or through a JavaScript SDK, for instance, to integrate a new tool to communicate with the PKM. But for everyday usage, there's also a higher level API in the form of a RESTful HTTPS server, which uses requests described with the Open API framework, which means that there are bindings readily available for a wide variety of programming languages, facilitating, of course, interoperability. Similarly, the deployment of the PKM and its tools is facilitated by the use of Docker containers and Docker Compose scripts, depending on the set of tools that one wants to deploy on a given platform. Finally, the API is available through open source licenses, namely AGPL and Apache, and can be found on OW2's GitLab at this URL. As I said, several tools have been bound to the PKM during the Decoder project. First, among software analysis tools, we find Tester, a test generator for graphical user interfaces. Pharmacy and OpenGML, formal verification tools for respectively C and C++ and Java programs. We also have GML-Gen, which is aimed at generating simple GML annotations from Java code, for instance, to assess that an object is never null when given to a specific method. Then we find language processing tools that extract information either from the source code or from the accompanying documentation, and attempt to find correspondences between the documents, and notably to trace the implementation of the original requirements of the system within the implementing code. Another important aspect of Decoder is the development of the ASFM language for abstract semi-formal modeling, which is meant to act as an intermediate step between natural language documents and fully formal specifications. I'll come back to that in the next slide, but for now I'd just like to mention that there are prototype tools to convert to and from ASFM documents. Finally, we have a browser-based front-end for the PKM and its associated tools, which also has the ability to use the Jupyter notebooks to deal with the PKM documents. Focusing now on natural language processing tools. In the context of the extraction of information from the source code itself, it has basically been used for two main things. First, to identify potential variable misuse within the code, and more generally to suggest some code repair for simple cases. For instance, to propose what the tool thinks is the appropriate symbol when a misuse has been detected. In the other direction, from natural language to code, most of the work has been dedicated to semantic parsing and semantic role labeling in order to identify the entities described in the documentation and to be able to map them to variables and functions in the code. This has also resulted in a first version of the traceability matrix builder that aims, as I said, at showing the user, and in this context, the reviewer role, which parts of the code implement a given requirement. Regarding ASFM, first version of the language has been defined for describing state machines diagrams in particular, and various tools have been developed on top of it. First, it's possible to generate ASFM diagrams from standard document formats, PDF and docx namely. Potentially we're using custom definitions if a user-defined parser is given in addition to the command tool. The reverse direction, the generation of docx or PDF from an ASFM diagrams is of course also possible. And we also have tools to generate directly ASFM templates from code or implementation. First, tester can generate diagrams to display the information it has gathered from the UI under test. And another tool is Excavator, which has been developed to abstract away the internal state of the Linux kernel in order to provide an appropriate context for the analysis of a driver, which is one of the use cases of Decoder, as we will see in the next slides. Finally, ASFM diagrams can be animated by a graphical debugger that uses information given by GDB and displays them according to the abstractions made in the diagram. We'll briefly speak about the front end now. So as I said, it is browser-based and uses the popular AngularJS framework. It first provides basic support for the main tools feeding the PKM, such as GML-Gen, Testa, Pharmacy, and so on. It has also a dedicated view for the traceability matrix between requirements and code. And as I said, you can directly import GPTR notebooks within the front-end and interact with the PKM that way. It is under heavy development right now, especially with feedback from the use cases. Namely, PKM tools and the PKM itself have been experimented on all the projects that have been selected as use cases in the first phase of Decoder. Namely, for C, 2 drivers from Linux, a simple watchdog, and a more involved Ethernet driver. For C++, we rely mainly on the OpenCV 2D graphics library. And for Java, there's a sample restaurant reservation system called MyThaiStar, which is meant to showcase best practices, and 4 OW2 projects: OZ4, Joram, Lutis, and Site4G. In addition to experimenting with the main platform, as I said, this was also the occasion to develop new helper tools, namely GMLGen and Excavator, as well as experimenting with OW2ASFM. Furthermore, we also gathered data to enhance the result of NLP tools, since, as always with AI-based techniques, it is important to have a sufficiently large training dataset to obtain suitable performance for the tools. So, in summary, the work done so far resulted in a fairly robust infrastructure for the PKM itself, with a good connection with the individual tools that are meant to interact with it, and interesting results on the use cases. Regarding what we want to do in the last 6 months of the project, first we have to finalize the UI and to adapt the methodology based on the work done in the use cases. Similarly, individual tools need also to be enhanced to better match the users' needs. And finally, interactions between the tools need to be refined. On the one hand, by extending ASFM and its accompanying tools to propose finer descriptions of the code, and on the other hand, by reinforcing links between NLP tools and ASFM, acting, as we said before, as an intermediate step between informal documents in plain natural language and fully formal specifications. Okay, so this concludes what I wanted to say about Decoder. Thanks again for your attention, and feel free to ask any question now, or to contact us through your favorite channels.
The next presentation is about another research project in which OW2 participates. This presentation is given by Antoine Moutier, our CTO, and the project is called Fasten. And Fasten helps manage software dependencies at a very fine-grained level, not at the level of the package, but at the level of the function call.
Hi everyone, and thank you for joining me for this presentation of the Fasten project. I will try to give you an overview of what is the project about and explain how we try to improve the dependency management by increasing the accuracy of package manager reports. I'm Antoine Mottier, OW2 CTO, and I will, in this presentation, first start with the current situation of dependency management, what tools we have, what are their limitations, and present the Fasten project, what is the idea behind the Fasten project and how we try to improve the current situation. But also I will try to speak and say a few words about the limitations that remain even after this improvement brings by the Fasten project. But first, let me start with the teams behind this project. So actually, we have a good mix of different contributors to the project. We have some companies, we have universities, and we have non-profit organizations such as OW2. All those participants collaborate to the development of the project. So, what is the current situation? So now when you do software development, when you create a new piece of software, you never create it from scratch. You're always reusing pre-existing components. It can be something low level, such as some feature of the operating system, like, for example, the file system. It can be some features, some libraries coming with the programming language you are using, the standard library. For example, you will not implement again some sorting algorithm. Usually you're reusing pre-existent implementation. And also more and more you are using third-party libraries. And those libraries actually themselves have dependencies on other libraries. So you end up with this kind of graphs where your code have a set of direct dependencies, and those dependencies will have, again, other dependencies. So we'll have what we call transitive dependencies. So for example, here in our example, the dependency TA here is transitive dependency. And you can see some specific situation where you can directly depend on a specific dependencies, but also another few dependency depend on the same library. And in such situation, it might get you into some trouble because you might require version 1 of the library, but your dependency B might require this version 2 of the library Z here. And so you need to sort it out. You need to pick only one version. For example, in Java, you can only load one version in one given class loader. So there is some decision to be made when we have such conflict. And to help you with that, you have a lot of toolings available. Usually it's specific per languages. So for example, in Java world, the currently probably most popular tooling that can help you with dealing with dependencies is Maven. So these tools will deal with the conflict I exposed in the previous slides, but it also provides some central repositories where it stores and organize all public dependencies, usually open source libraries. And so it takes care of you of downloading the libraries and get them locally on your developer environment or on your continuous integration. You have similar tools with Python. You have pip. For the C programming language, it's a little bit specific, but we can say that the Debian repository, for example, is a kind of central repository, and you have tools like APT that will do the dependency conflict resolution. So you have all those tools that really help you to get your dependency and build the software, but this doesn't prevent you from having this huge complexity. Your software, due to transitive dependency, will have a more and more increasing numbers of dependency, And also on the central server of this package manager solution, like on Maven Central, for example, you have a huge ecosystem of libraries, and you don't really have control over them. It's only third-party development, and it raised some issue regarding qualities. For example, what will happen if someone decides to remove the library previously published in central repositories, and if you rely on this library being available there, it will break your build. So if you are in a continuous development approach, you might no longer be able to deploy. And also, of course, you have this dependency on the quality. The quality of the dependency will impact your application, the overall quality of your application. So usually you carefully select your direct dependencies, but you don't really look into the transitive dependency because it's too much time consuming. So maybe there is this security issue in one of the transitive dependency, and it will impact your code. So due to this huge graphs of dependency, it's difficult to do manually search and assessment of quality for each library. So nowadays you have tools that help you with that. For example, you have database of security vulnerabilities such as the CVE. You have automated tools such as Dependabot that can scan your software manifesto and check that your dependencies, the version of dependency you are using, doesn't include security vulnerabilities, and they can even automate and working in collaboration with CI to suggest updating the library. But all these tools have some important limitation because they work at package level. So maybe if you have this big library with a lot of feature, you're only using a subpart of the library. So maybe in case of a security issue on the library, it might not impact you because you're only using a subpart of the library. So you don't need to update, even if the tools tell you that you should update because there is a security vulnerability, for example. You probably don't need to update if you are not using this specific part. So the tools really lack this accuracy and leading to false positive. And even new tool, like for example the recent open source insight from Google, they only work at package level, most of them. So you don't get this accuracy. So you have reports about that includes false positive. And this is really where Fasten aims to provide a better alternative by bringing this accuracy to reports. So you will provide reports on various aspects of the code. So as stated, security vulnerability, but also license compliance, code quality also, to give you a more precise report. So how it does that? Actually, you can see here above on top what are the approach of dependency manager and what the current tools are doing. They view libraries at package level and they see the dependencies between the various library and the different version. But Fasten will actually go deeper. It will look inside your code, your application code, to see the function call. So it will build this call graph, and it will do the same for your dependencies and dependencies of dependencies and so on. So it'll give you a very accurate view, the whole call graph of your application. So for example, if there is a security issue in an unused function here, for example, in library 2, it will not tell you to update. And when I say it will not tell you to update, we'll see later, we have integration in package manager with Fasten. So it's actually the package manager that will report you that. But if the issue is actually on one of the function method called, in this case, of course, it will warn you and provide you guidance with the required update. But generating the code graph is actually only the first step in the processing of the application library codes by Fasten. Actually, once the code graph of the application and all these dependencies is generated, Fasten will need to enrich this code graph with extra metadata, such as the non-vulnerability on each individual function, and also licensing information, quality metrics for the code, and so on. So this is really a very important step of Fasten. Once you got the code graph, it enriches the code graph with a bunch of metadata. So this is an overview of the architecture of Fasten. So as I said, Fasten will generate the code graph. For that, you will use the binary version available in public central repositories, the binary version of the library publicly available. But it will actually, to have more accurate code graph, also use the source code and mix the code graph generated from static code analysis and dynamic code analysis together to have the most accurate code graph possible. And it will also do this processing of external source of information, such as CVE, to get the security vulnerability information and associate them with specific code lines and then function in the code graph. And it will also analyze the source code to find out about license, for example, to do some quality metrics. And all that will be stored. Fasten actually use two different storage, one for the code graph, it's a graph database, and one for the metadata, it's a classic SQL database. With graph database here, because as you can imagine, the volume of data is quite large because we're scanning the whole ecosystem. So on Maven Central, you can imagine there is quite a few libraries now, and with all the method of each library for each version. So the volume of data is quite important. Then from the developer's perspective, how you will interact with Fasten. Actually, most of it will happen through already existing dependency manager tools, such as Maven or pip. They will query Fasten to get the information, the code graph already generated for the dependencies. Also, part of the code graph generation will happen locally where the dependency manager tool is running. This is for the code of the application that is not yet published, of course, because it's under development. So this analysis, code graph generation, will be done locally and will be merged with the available code graph from the Fasten server. And then the resolution to find out if a specific, for example, vulnerable function is called is performed locally, and based on the result, this is reported to the user. So maybe it will make the build failed if there is a dependency that is called with a security vulnerability. But if the vulnerability exists in a piece of code that is not called, the build will be successful. So this works, of course, for the developer, but most of the time also it will be really useful when the build is running with the continuous integration server. So that was a very brief overview of the Fasten project. I guess you might have some questions, so don't hesitate to ask me in the chat or visit the Fasten website. Of course, I didn't mention it, but Fasten is an open source project, so any contribution, testing is more than welcome. And this project is actually receiving funding from the European Union as part of Horizon 2020 program. So thank you all for your attention, and don't hesitate to send me your question. Thank you.
Now we have a presentation by Dashamir Oksa of the Canadian Institute of Technology about OpenPGP. If you use OpenPGP to secure your email, then you should consider publishing your key on Web Key Directory. It's easier than you think.
I'm Dashamir Hoja and I'm going to talk about Web Key Directory. Web Key Directory is a way for sharing your public key by publishing it on web on a well-known location where email clients can find and download it automatically. Once you publish your key on the Web Key Directory, your contacts will be able to verify your signed emails automatically and send you immediately encrypted messages. And this will be done automatically by your email client because they are able to locate and fetch your public key automatically. Web Key Directory is supported by almost all the mail clients. Other ways for sharing your public key with your contacts are by exporting the key and attaching it to the first email, or publishing it to key server networks where your contacts can find and fetch it. Both of these methods have their problems and are not recommended. Web Key Directory is the recommended way for sharing the public key. Before building a Web Key Directory, let's try to understand first how it works by following the steps that a mail client would do to locate the public key corresponding to a certain email address. Let's use this email address as an example. Example.org is the domain and user is the local part of the email address. The mail client will check first whether a Web Key Directory for the domain example.org exists, and it will perform this check by looking for the file policy in this URL location first. If it does not find that file in this location, then it will look for the file policy on this other location. The first one is called the advanced method of Web Key Directory, and the second one is called the direct method. The file policy usually is just an empty file. After determining which Web Key Directory method is implemented, the client will try to download the public key from one of these locations. If the advanced method exists, then it will use this URL location, and for the direct method, it will use this URL. The name of the public key is under the directory HU, which stands for hashed user ID. And actually, this is a kind of hash of the local part of the email address. For now, we don't need to know how to calculate or to find this hash. Let's start to build a Web Key Directory with a direct method first, since it's a bit simpler than the advanced method. The direct method requires that we have access to the web server of the domain example.org, and the server supports HTTPS. And the advanced method additionally requires access to the DNS server of the domain example.org. This is also obvious from the URL of the public key that we have to download. First of all, both the advanced and the direct method require HTTPS. And then for the direct method, we try to locate the key on the same domain as the domain of the email address. For the advanced method, we try to locate the public key on the server or the subdomain openpgpkey.example.org, and so we need to define this this DNS record. It has to be resolvable. So in order to define this record, we need to have access to the DNS server of this domain. Let's create the directory where we are going to publish the keys. If we assume that the document root is var www.html, then we create under this directory these subdirectories .well-known openpgp key, and in this directory we create an empty file policy. Now we need to export the key in binary format, not ASCII armament, and we can do it with a command, gpg command like this. This option makes sure that it is exported in binary format, and this is the email address of the key that we are exporting, and we export it in a file with a name that is the hashed user ID. After exporting the file, we transfer it to the web server under the directory HU, hashed user ID. Now, how do we know, or how do we find out this hashed user ID? We can do it with the command gpg with the option with wkd hash. And the output of this command will be something like this, and it also shows the hashed user ID for this key. The same way we can publish other keys. For example, the key for user1@example.org, user2.example.org, etc. At the end, the directory should look like this. The configuration of the web server. For the web key directory, it should disable directory listing. It should have the right course headers, and it should use application octet stream as the content type for the data of public keys, since we exported them in binary format. And for Apache 2, the configurations should look like this. This is the directory where are placed the public keys. Option minus indexes disables directory listing. Force type application octet stream, and header always set access control low origin, etc. This configuration requires that the Apache modules MIME and headers are enabled. Now that we have published the key on the webkey directory, we need to test that it works, and we can test it by downloading the published key with a command like wget. But first of all, we need to find out the hashed user ID, and we can do it with a command like this: gpg wks client print wkd hash and user@example.org. The output of this command will be something like this. It shows the hashed user ID and the user ID. Now that we know the hashed user ID, we can construct the URL of the public key, and it is something like this: HTTPS. We continue with the domain, and we are using the direct webkey directory method, and then .well-known openpgp key, HU, hashed user ID, and the local part of the email. After downloading it, we save it in this file, and then we can import it to GPG with a command like this. Other ways for testing that the published key is accessible via webkey directory are these ones. We can use the command gpg locate keys and the email address for the key that we want to download. It will download and import the key. And since we are just testing, we can use a temporary GNU-PG home. And another way is by this web site, we can give the email that we want to test, and it will find out whether the web key, whether the public key is published via the webkey directory. Publishing the keys of an organization. So far we have seen how to publish keys manually, one by one, but as the number of the keys to be published gets large, it becomes tedious and error-prone to manage them. However, it is possible to publish them in bulk, using a command like gpg wks client. Let's assume that we have in our GNU-PG keyring the public keys of the members of an organization. For example, they were sent to us by attachment and we imported them. Now we can export all these keys into a webkey directory format with command like this. This is the combination of two commands. The first one lists all the keys that belong to a certain domain, and then it displays the output in a format that shows only the fingerprint and the user ID. The output of the first command will look like this. And when this output is piped to this command, it will create a webkey directory structure in the given directory. And this directory will have a structure like this: webkey directory example.org, HU, and then the published keys. Now we just need to synchronize this directory with which is in the local computer with the one on the web server, and we can do it with rsync with a command like this: rsync. This is the local directory, and this is the directory on the web server. The advanced method of webkey directory. As we have seen, with the direct method, the keys are published in a location like this one. With the advanced method, the keys are published in a location like this one. Everything else is the same. We can notice that we need to define this subdomain. It has to be resolvable. So we need access to the DNS server of this domain. And another difference is that with the advanced method, after OpenPGP key, we have a subdirectory named after the domain. So the direct method is a bit easier than the advanced method because it does not need access to the DNS server of the domain. But the advanced method is more flexible than the direct method because we can implement the webkey directory on a server that is different from the web server of the domain. So this DNS record can point to a server that is different from the web server. And also on the same webkey directory server, we can support several domains, more than one domain. Webkey service. So far we have seen how to publish keys manually, one by one or in bulk. For a large organization, it is more suitable if each member can publish and update his key himself. One way to implement this is with a web interface, where users can upload their public keys. Another one is to send the public key to the webkey directory by email. Webkey service allows users to publish their public key by email through a specific email protocol. However, we are not going to go into the details of how webkey service works and how to implement the webkey service. If you are interested, we can look more details about it in this posting or in this blog, dashoja.fs.al webkey directory. Thank you for your attention.
The next presentation discusses the challenges of migrating knowledge bases between software platforms. with a particular focus on wiki-based knowledge management software. And this presentation is given by Clément Aubin from XWiki.
Okay, so hi everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Clément Aubin, and I'm very happy to give this talk, which is entitled On the Challenges of Migrating Knowledge Across Software Platforms at OW2con 2021. Well, let's dive right in. We only have 15 minutes. So today I would like to tackle this problem in 4 different parts, basically. The first one being providing a bit of context about knowledge and knowledge solutions in general and how they work. And then I would like to also discuss a bit about migration methodologies, particularly when you try to migrate from one knowledge base to another. And here I will use the case of what we do at in my company, which is XWiki SaaS, for migrating users from Confluence to XWiki. Then I'm going to describe a bit also how we handle specific features that may be in knowledge bases, for example, extensions, which can be proved to be particularly difficult to migrate. And finally, I would like to open on open standards, which could be interesting to develop in this field, which is something that we lack. So, just before we start, who am I? My name is Clément Aubin. I'm an account manager at XWiki SaaS. So XWiki SaaS, we are a software editor. We develop 2 open source software, which is XWiki, which is a wiki-based knowledge management software, and CryptPad. CryptPad, you can see it kind of as an alternative to things such as Google Drive, but end-to-end encrypted. Going back on my side, I'm mostly passionate about open source. You can find me on different projects. So XWiki, of course, Open Food Facts or FOSDEM. And if you want to contact me, you have my email. So, how do we manipulate knowledge today? Well, so today, you and I will both work in environments that are very probably knowledge heavy, meaning that there is information everywhere. When you wake up in the morning, you will look at the news and maybe open up your emails, check the company chats, and then maybe continue writing this report that you started last evening. So you will write it maybe in a wiki, or you will write it on some drive that you have, for example, and then you will have to send it back to your client. And so what's interesting is that every single one of these actions will leverage some kind of knowledge that you will have access to. This knowledge is scattered everywhere. So in the emails, you will have the communication with your client. Then in this report, you will have the content of the report itself, and it's really hosted in 2 different platforms. And so in order to access these different platforms, you will go through kind of a tool. It could be your mail client. It could be the UI of the drive that you are using to edit your report. And so here I have listed a bit the kind of the solutions that you may use. And when you are using these solutions, you will tend to actually do what's intended for the solution, but you may also start using a set of tools that are embedded within the solution, but that are not really like, for example, if I give you an example, when you are writing an email using Gmail, for example, you have this kind of features that allows you to end automatically your sentences. And so while using this tool, you are using an extra feature that is provided by the mail client, that is not really the core need of a mail client, but that is that kind of small little thing that adds really a main differentiator. And what's interesting is that going more in depth on this subject, when you will be using tools to set your knowledge, so for example chats, if you want to discuss with your team members, you will tend to use these small features of the tool in order to format your knowledge in a certain way. So chats, for example, you could have a solution that uses threads, which is a specific type of chat. Or maybe if you are using a documentation platform such as Confluence and XWiki, you may use, for example, macros, which you can use in documents to create some generic content. And so to be clear, this is really something that we will see both in open source and proprietary software, and it's really fine because that's what actually gives kind of a main differentiator to your solution, and that's probably what will allow you or your team to choose it compared to others. So, well, it's good to have these features, but in the meantime, whenever you want to migrate, you will also have to leverage them, meaning that you will need to find equivalence from the platform that you are migrating to the target platform that you want to have. So we'll go back on this subject actually when we'll discuss about extensions a bit more in depth. Now I want to discuss about how we usually migrate from one knowledge base to another, and here we'll take the example of what we do as part of XWiki SaaS when migrating users, for example, from Confluence to XWiki or from any other solution to XWiki. So to give you a bit of context, I'm going to actually use quite a lot the example of Confluence because in last October, Atlassian, which is the editor of Confluence, did a significant update to its pricing model, which is basically, well, almost killing the prices for on-premise licenses. If you are a team of 20 people and you want to have a Confluence hosted on your premise, you will have to pay around $2,500, which is not that accessible for a small company. And so this has raised concerns, of course, especially for small and middle companies, where the switch to cloud is not really wanted. They don't want to have their Confluence on the cloud. They want to have it on premise, maybe to keep control of their data, maybe because they want some kind of protection. And so this company basically started looking maybe for alternatives to Confluence, and maybe they ended up calling us because we have a pretty good support for migrating off of Confluence to XWiki. And when we are looking at the content migration, so could it be from Confluence or from something else, we usually have like 3 different steps on which we can approach a migration. The first step would be to basically do what we call a raw text import. So consider it basically as to me, I see it more as a huge copy paste of the current knowledge base that you have, and the target to the target knowledge base that you are trying to get. So you may copy the data of the documents, but maybe you will lose some metadata. You will especially lose potentially some formatting which is not supported. And one of the issues with this text import option is that you will also have some users which already have the burden of migrating from one tool to another, and it means also changing a bit the way they work and adapting to the new tool, which will also in the meantime have to deal with this loss of metadata for the documents and the information that is being migrated. So it's an additional burden. Fortunately today we tend to have this less and less, mostly because we tend to have more and more either a small API access or the possibility to export at least the general information of a knowledge base when we migrate it. Second option is really when you have you have the possibility to export a set of metadata that is related to all the documents that you have in your knowledge base, and you will actually configure the target knowledge base to actually take this metadata and import it, take it into account. We usually call that batch import in XWiki because we have a tool that is actually designed to do this kind of imports. So it usually looks like having a CSV on the side that will contain all your metadata, and then next to it you will have also other files which will describe a bit the documentation that you are trying to import. So quite interesting. Usually you won't get you may lose some information because it's a method that is fairly generic, and so if you have a platform that is that comes with a set of very specific features, it can be difficult to tune so that you don't lose anything during this batch import. And finally, there is one last solution, which is kind of the Rolls Royce of the import. It's where you lose almost no data. You keep the formatting of your pages. You keep all the maybe in the case of knowledge bases, for example, in the case of wikis, you will have some documents which will have history, and you will keep all the history. And so this method will basically use a backup of the old instance, maybe a database dump or a specific backup format, or just plug into the API of the platform in order to do the import. And so this is usually the best solution. The main issue is that it's actually a solution that is very specific. It's not something that you can do for different types of knowledge base at the time. But even with this last option, there are some limits basically, and the limits come from any kind of extensions or additional plugin or feature that you may have put in your knowledge base. So remember, we talked about that in the first slide. And nowadays we see more and more tools that will provide a marketplace for extensions that will allow you to better arrange your content. In the case of a wiki, as I said, it can be, for example, macros, which will allow you to actually display them, display some content in a certain way, provide some dashboard and things like that. And it's really super useful for organizing the content itself. It makes a great experience, and I feel like it's really a good opportunity for knowledge bases to use macros or similar tools. But in the meantime, it will cause some issues during the migration, because you will have to find some equivalents of these macros in the new platform. And so sometimes there is no equivalent, and you need to develop one, which is costly. Or sometimes there is also an equivalent that exists. However, it's an equivalent that is basically limited, or that works differently maybe, and you will have to tune your importer in order to make sure that the content that you import fits correctly, and you don't lose anything with your macros. What we usually do, for example, for this solution, at XWiki, what we did is that we created an open source migrator to take data from Confluence and migrate it to XWiki. And what we are doing also is, whenever we have a client that wants to migrate and it has some macros from Confluence that are not 100% compatible at first with XWiki, we will propose them to actually take these macros, do kind of a conversion, and we put this conversion as open source so that it can be reused in later projects. And that way, your migrator grows and grows with the time. So finally, and I will be very quick because I only have 2 minutes left. What we are missing today is really standards for easing the data exchange across knowledge bases. We really have none, but in the meantime, if you look at other kind of knowledge management software, I'm thinking mostly about chats, for example, maybe emails, or maybe just a document platform, so Drive and things like that. There is already a standard. So for documents, it will be ODT or DocX maybe, where you can move your files. When you want to migrate from chats, or when you want to build two platforms between each other, for example, you can do bridges with Matrix. So nowadays it's possible. But for knowledge management softwares, such as, for example, wikis or maybe CMS, we are missing these tools. And the main issue is that actually, in order to develop them, you need some time. It will also not benefit the providers that want to have lock-in with their solution. And so, to me, that's why we are missing kind of this open standard. So that's the end of my talk. I hope that it was very useful for at least some of you. And if you have any question, maybe we have some time to take them. So thank you. Bye.
Welcome back, and now we are moving into the last session of OW2con, the one on cloud computing technologies. Our first speaker is Paweł Skrzypek of OW2 member 7 Bulls, and he presents us a complete multi-cloud platform and methodology for the automated deployment and optimization of serverless applications on the cloud.
Good morning, my name is Paweł Skrzypek, and I'm really happy to be here and to be able to present our presentation regarding the multi-cloud optimization, autonomous multi-cloud serverless deployment and optimized management. In my presentation, I will tell about the Melodic project. It is the one of the OW2 projects, so it is fully open source and available for download. What is Melodic? It is a single universal platform for deployment and management of the application in the cloud and multi-cloud. We are supporting Azure, AWS, Google Cloud Platform, OpenStack-based cloud providers, and more. We can deploy automatically application to this multi-cloud environment in the optimized way. So we can select the best cloud provider, the best resources, and properly scale up the application. And as an application can be deployed on the virtual machines, containers, and also serverless components in one transparent way. As I said, Melodic is fully open source and can be downloaded from the OW2. Why to use Melodic? Probably it is the simplest and easiest way to use multi-cloud approach, because you don't need to learn many cloud providers, many different consoles and so on, and can use only Melodic to deploy to the multi-cloud. It is the unified way to deploy virtual machines, containers, serverless, and also big data framework to different cloud providers. The deployment is fully automatic, so no manual operations are needed. And also Melodic, it is a very unique feature of the Melodic, is able to optimize the usage of the cloud resources and automatically select the best set of these resources. Why this is possible? The first step is that Melodic has its own modeling language called CAML, Cloud Application Modeling and Execution Language. This is the language similar to Tosca, but extends Tosca to allow for modeling components, connections, security, and also requirements for the infrastructure. So all of this is modeled in the CAML in the cloud agnostic way. User can set the requirements, constraints, and so-called utility function, which decides which deployment is better and allows the optimization process. What is this best deployment? It is very difficult to say what is the best deployment. But before knowing what is the best deployment, we need to know something about the running applications. So we should collect the metrics to have the context of the running application. Melodic is collecting both technical and business metrics. Based on the metrics, we can create the utility function which decides what is the best deployment. Usually we are thinking about the cost savings, cost minimization, but the best cost savings is to not deploy application at all, and the cost is zero, which is not the case. So usually it is the trade-off between the cost, performance, and availability and other factors. Melodic is focusing on business value of the application, so we can measure custom metrics like average response time to the user and time for the finishing job. So you can consider Melodic like your smart automatic DevOps, which is able to select the best deployment. How it works? At first, DevOps person needs to model the application in the camel, set the initial values of the parameters, then Melodic calculate initial deployment, so initial best deployment, and automatically deploy this selected deployment to the cloud providers. When application is running, the metrics are collected and Melodic is monitoring the application. When the certain thresholds of the metrics are exceeded, then new solution, Melodic is looking for the new better solution, and after finding the new better solution, the application is reconfigured. Reconfiguration is fully seamless, so it's not stop the application, new resources are added, and then old resources are removed, and so on. So application is working all the time. And that is how the Melodic working. And now I want to say what are the purpose why we should use Melodic for business application. And we have one of the early adopters of the Melodic, the AI Investments company. It is the Polish company which aims to build or already built the investments optimization solution using the advanced AI models in the time series forecasting and optimization area. And typical business goal for the AI investments is to train, for example, 50 predictions models in, for example, 1 hour using as minimal number of the resources. And how the AI investments is using Melodic. The operator investments analysis in AI investments is starting the training, so setting the number of the jobs to be trained, and initially the on-premises resources are used because they are already exist, so it is the cheapest way to start with using these resources, but usually these resources are not enough. So estimated time for the finishing training on these resources is over 1 hour. So Melodic automatically, based on the current values of the metrics, is looking for the more resources and setting up provision the resources in the cloud and deploy application there. And again, check what is the estimated time. If it's still too long, then new resources are added till the moment that estimated processing time is 1 hour or below as as assumed in the business goal. And after the finishing training, all of the cloud resources are removed to save the cost. All results are stored. So it is a very simple use case, but it is very, very powerful. The obvious benefits are as follow. The effective optimization of the resource consumption. It is very well chosen scaling of the machine learning trainings possibility, optimization of the work relative to the budget planned, and additional feature is the increased reliability of the application. So in case of the outage of the one cloud provider or on-premises infrastructure, Melodic can automatically move the workload to the different cloud provider to not stop the application and to achieve the highest possible availability. And what are the cost savings benefits? In case of the AI investments, it is possible to achieve over 60% of the cost savings thanks to that multi-cloud optimization and careful usage of the cloud resources. In this table, we are comparing the cost of this hybrid model with the on-premises and cloud resources used on demand, and we can compare that to the cloud-only model, which is presented as first. and on-premises only model, with the same parameters. And as you can see, in both cases, the cost is much higher. Of course, this is extreme examples, so probably real savings are slightly lower, but nevertheless, it is the huge cost savings, especially for the companies which are intensively use high compute intensive applications. But Melodic is further extended, further developed within the Morphemic project. We want to introduce two new concepts. One concept is the polymorph architecture, so the ability to not only select the number of the resources and optimize the number of the resources, but also to change the technical form of the application to select, for example, what is better to use virtual machines, containers, or maybe serverless components or hardware accelerated components. So that gives the additional dimension to the optimization and could give even better results. And the second concept is the proactive adaptation, so ability to proactively adapt application to the expected or estimated workloads. Currently, Melodic is based on the actual values of the of the metrics, but within the Morphemic project, we want to forecast the values of the metrics and make the reconfiguration before the real usage is needed. Thanks to that, for example, for the e-commerce application, we could better adapt to the expected increase in the number of the users, because we can adapt our application before the number of the users will increase, so the experience for the users will be much better. Morphemic project is in progress. The first release is planned till the end of the August this year, so it will be available also for download and usage, of course, on the OW2. You can download Melodic. Here is the link to the Melodic Cloud website. Melodic is released under the Mozilla public license, but all of this source code is stored on the OW2. And I also want to encourage you to stay in touch with us, to visit Melodic Cloud, to follow us on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and other media. We are very active and very actively provide, I hope, interesting information regarding the both Melodic and Morphemic development, and also the multi-crowd related things. So please follow us on the social media, and we also want to encourage you to join to the Melodic development as an open source developer. We are looking for the developers, and any person or team is welcome. We have quite visionary roadmap to further extend Melodic platform and to make it the best multi-cloud optimization platform. So that's all from my side. Thank you very much. If you are interested, please contact me in details. We are very open for any type of the cooperation. Thank you very much.
The following talk is by Thierry Carrez of the Open Infrastructure Foundation and touches on a hot topic, sovereignty. Thierry tells us how open source and the sovereign cloud stack can play a critical role in enabling a sovereign infrastructure in Europe.
Hello everyone, my name is Thierry Carrez. I work for the Open Infrastructure Foundation, which was previously known as the OpenStack Foundation. OpenStack is an open source framework to build an alternative to the big hyperscalers. And more recently, we moved to supporting more widely open infrastructure, which is why we renamed to the Open Infrastructure Foundation. I'm based in France, so the questions of digital sovereignty are important to me. The fact that most hyperscale clouds like Amazon, Microsoft, or Google are all based in the US. And that means your data is ultimately controlled by other jurisdictions. The theme for OW2con this year is leveraging the European open source ecosystem. So I've been wondering, how can we leverage the vibrant European open source ecosystem to build our digital sovereignty? That's where the idea of this talk came from. But first, what do we mean by digital sovereignty? Why does it matter and how do we enable it? The 21st century is driven by software. In a fast-changing world, whoever adapts the fastest wins. And it's a question of disrupt or be disrupted. Adapting fast means shipping new features fast, delivering new applications fast. And the way you deliver those applications has been evolving. 20 years ago, you would procure some physical hardware, and as an application deployer, you would install an operating system, your dependencies, and your applications directly on top of that. That took a lot of time and maintenance work. So we started to add more abstractions, more layers. We added hardware virtualization, abstracting the server you're deploying on from the physical hardware that runs it. You gained a lot of efficiency doing that. Then we added cloud APIs to allow to programmatically access those virtualized resources. So you have programmable infrastructure on one side and cloud-aware applications being deployed on top of that. This programmable infrastructure is key to reach the next level of velocity. Machines need to be able to provision the resources they need by themselves. But building up this programmable infrastructure by yourself is pretty hard. It is complex to do, and it is difficult to hire people that know how to do it because there is a lot of demand for those skills on the market. Luckily, you can pay others to do it for you, thanks to public clouds. But the trick is, the public cloud market is cornered by a couple of internet giants, mostly based in the US or China. So that creates a challenge, especially for European governments and companies. The challenge is that to stay competitive, European companies need access to programmable infrastructure. And the simplest way to do that is to use a hyperscale cloud, public cloud based in the US. But data is the basic resource of the 21st century, and which legislation the company that holds your data is under ultimately defines who controls it. The US government can compel a US company to disclose their customer data. In case of a geopolitical conflict, the US government could shut down your access to vital data. That creates a significant geopolitical vulnerability. And if the last 10 years are any guide, that vulnerability, if left unaddressed, will only grow. Beyond that, even assuming good intent on those companies and governments, the jurisdiction under which your data is held controls which laws apply to it. And Europe has very progressive privacy laws that protect individuals from the reach of greedy data aggregation giants? How do we enforce those laws in a future where all data lives in places escaping those laws? The solution, of course, is to build our own European-based public clouds. But it's easier said than done. Europe has a vibrant ecosystem of companies, but it lacks the giants that can compete with Google or Amazon. How can we turn that vibrant ecosystem of smaller actors from a liability to an asset? Germany and France have acknowledged that critical geopolitical vulnerability for a while, and we had several attempts at building giant sovereign clouds in the past, but they were not adapted to the nature of the European ecosystem. A new initiative was launched last year called Gaia-X. Rather than trying to establish a new giant from scratch, Gaia-X takes the problem from the other end. How to enable a vibrant ecosystem of smaller companies to provide a rich, coherent, interoperable service offering, one that encapsulates advanced privacy laws rather than works around them. Gaia-X is a framework to describe infrastructure and data services, federate them into a single catalog, and make them interoperable. It allows to share identity across services and lets you specify the guarantees you want to apply to your data in terms of geographical location or encryption. Gaia-X is not a giant public cloud. It's a framework to describe disparate, smaller cloud services as a federated, interoperable offering, turning that vibrant ecosystem of smaller actors from a liability to an asset. The code for the Gaia-X framework, specifications, catalog of services, federated identity will be open source. But the infrastructure and data services that will be accessible through Gaia-X can be proprietary. But I think open source has a role to play, and more specifically, open infrastructure. Open source solutions that provide programmable infrastructure. So how can open infrastructure help? If we go back to our picture with programmable infrastructure on one side and cloud-aware applications on the other, open infrastructure is solutions that help you provide that programmable infrastructure. And more generally, we serve that new population that we call infrastructure providers, which is distinct from application developers and deployers. That is the movement we started with OpenStack, and that has extended beyond OpenStack now. So why use open source for infrastructure? Why does it matter? Well, first, it gives everyone access to infrastructure providing technology. All organizations, all countries. It allows to distribute the future more evenly. And by making those technologies accessible to all, we allow everyone to play and innovate without friction or having to ask for permission. We basically maximize innovation. Beyond those two key benefits, there are a number of other key properties of open infrastructure that makes it especially suitable to applying it to digital sovereignty. Independence is one of them. Open infrastructure is not just open source, it's also openly developed. That means everyone can participate on a level playing field, under neutral governance, with nobody owning the keys to the kingdom. That independence and neutrality is key to enable an interoperable ecosystem. Another benefit of open development is transparency. All technical discussions are happening in public. All project governance decisions are also publicly documented. Trust is essential in building sovereign cloud solutions, and open infrastructure is naturally transparent. Finally, being accessible to all means that everyone can standardize on the same solution, enabling interoperability. Interoperability is the main challenge in federating smaller actors. It's really hard to eliminate the differences and present a coherent user experience. Standardizing on features is the first layer. Using the same APIs is a layer above that. Using the same technical stack is even better. But the ultimate level in interoperability is to use the same distribution and operation stacks. And that's the challenge that Sovereign Cloud Stack aims to solve. Sovereign Cloud Stack is an initiative led by Kurt Garloff, aiming to build a standard stack for providing sovereign infrastructure. It would be a complete Gaia-X compatible programmable infrastructure solution. And by reusing that stack, providers can be sure to be compatible and join a federation of interoperable providers. The stack provides VMs, containers, Kubernetes clusters by integrating open infrastructure solutions like OpenStack, Kubernetes, or Ceph. It is highly opinionated, which is the price to pay to be truly interoperable. And finally, it is openly developed open source. So it's open source, of course, but also openly designed, openly developed under an open governance model. Several companies already joined this initiative, essentially from Germany and France at this stage, like Deutsche Telekom or OVH Cloud. But we are seeing other European companies like City Network or Stack HPC join the initiative. So in summary, digital sovereignty is a major challenge for Europe in the 21st century. We need a solution to turn an ecosystem of smaller actors from a liability to an asset. Gaia-X is the European solution to foster this federation of smaller actors. It provides a way to specify your requirements and discover compatible infrastructure and data processing services. Open infrastructure is open source infrastructure solutions for applications, data processing, data storage, and networking. By being openly developed, it enables independence from single vendors and transparency in decision making. It reduces friction and gives everyone access to the technology, allowing everyone to standardize on an interoperable offering. Sovereign Cloud Stack goes one step further by producing a standard distribution and operational stack compatible with Gaia-X that maximizes interoperability for adopters of the same stack. By doing so, it facilitates the federation of smaller actors into a solid, diverse, and interoperable offering. Thank you for your attention, and thanks to OW2con for the opportunity to present.
Now the next talk introduces the Morphemic project, which is an extension of the OW2 Melodic multi-cloud platform into areas such as cloud computing, big data and artificial intelligence. And this talk is given by Alessandra Bagnato of Softeam.
Good morning. I am Alessandra Bagnato, Modelio Research Responsible in Softeam, Docker Post Group, and I'm very happy to be here today to present to you the Morphemic project, Advanced Polymorphic and Proactive Cloud Computing Resources Adaptation in the Cloud. The project vision is to simplify cloud application modeling and continuously optimize and morph the deployment model to take advantage of beneficial cloud capabilities. Within the project, we have two OW2 technology as core Morphemic project building blocks. One of them is Melodic, an Horizon 2020 project, and the other is the Proactive Workflow Scheduler. You can find the two links also in the presentation. OW2 is a strategic enabler for Morphemic. We have, in fact, very key unknown project members that are part of the consortium 7 Bull Activeon Engineering, the University of Oslo. And of course, we are within an environment fostering innovation. We have technical assistance for project operation, guidance for research and project industrialization, and of course, a great supportive community. The Morphemic core components that we will be presenting today are the Modelium Camel Designer, cloud application modeling and execution language with Modelio, the Modelio Camel Designer that is part of the user interface sub-feature presented by me, and then the forecasting module that will be presented by Yannis Verginatis, and that will present the forecasting mechanism to predict the value of certain metrics and provide the probability level. This module is part of the forecasting sub-feature that within Morphemic will give the ability to dynamically plan and adapt application deployment configuration based on forecasted context. We go in here within the cloud application modeling with Camel Designer. The Morphemic Camel Designer is able to design all that is required for cloud application modeling and to edit and export this Camel model in XML format. The Modelio development process is created by extending UML meta models. It requires then UML model knowledge and concept meta model example. And with these, we can create a new concept and modify new concept, a command for creation, views and tool for creation, and property page that are very helpful for editing. To do that, we are able to create custom commands to do the import-export, and we are very much facilitated by, of course, the existing Camel DSL and many examples. And the Camel Designer, the Modelio modeling tool, looks as you can see in here with these different graphical parts, the diagram parts, some tools to create the diagram, some properties, and of course the Model Explorer. The Model Explorer shows the hierarchy of the persisted model element and allows to create, delete, copy and paste other model elements. And a set of tools is provided for each diagram to help in this activity. In here you can see an example of cloud application modeling with the Camel Designer, where you can create a Camel model and you can use the palette to describe, and you can see all the various different models that are part of the Camel. So the organization, the requirement, and the deployment model. You can find the modeling Camel application model with the Camel Designer already on the Modelio Research and Development Research website, and in GitHub. You can see it here, the URL, and you can also download Modelio at Modelio open source that is downloadable at modelio.org. We will now go on with Yannis' presentation on the forecasting module.
We will continue the presentation of Morphemic with a short overview of the forecasting mechanism. My name is Yannis Verginadis, and with the Institute of Communications and Computer Systems, we participate in the Morphemic project. And I'm also an assistant professor at the Athens University of Economics and Business. So we are going to focus on the forecasting subfeature, which is one of the core parts of the Morphemic platform. And this subfeature refers to the ability to dynamically plan and adapt application deployment configurations according to the forecasted context. So what we are talking about here is an end-to-end proactive reconfiguration support that includes all the modeling aspects, for example, utility functions that are using forecasted values in order to optimize the current or the future topology of the application that has been deployed. An advanced forecasting module that is able to issue these forecasted values, but also the implementation of the deployment and the reconfiguration cycle. So an integral part of this feature is the forecasting module, which involves a dedicated mechanism that is able to predict the value of certain metrics and provide a certain probability level. So in this platform that is able to deploy application components in the cloud continuum, the important concepts are, first of all, the raw metrics that are monitored through a number of deployed sensors wherever an application component resides. Also, we calculate a number of composite metrics by combining raw metrics or other composite metrics following techniques, for example, of complex event processing. And we are using variables to define a constraint problem, and their values are discovered by a number of solvers in order to find the best possible configuration of the application. Through the forecasting module, we will be able to discover the predicted metrics, which is the values of either raw or composite metrics that are used in order to define service level objectives. And once these indicate a potential violation, then we will be able to start a reconfiguration cycle. So in order to do so, we have developed and extended a distributed event management system, which is quite efficient for distributed environments, multi-cloud environments, but also fog computing environments, where we, first of all, we deploy in a centralized manner a server that is able to state or dictate to the several different clients that resides to all the hosting resources that are used for deploying application components, which kind of complex event patterns rules they should deploy or they should consider. And of course, it orchestrates the deployments of the appropriate sensors. So imagine having a deployment in different cloud providers, but also different fog resources. So instead of aggregating all the monitoring metrics in the centralized server, we follow a hierarchical process where we aggregate and we process the monitoring metrics in different levels. For example, in instance level, in a cloud level, we can use a level for the availability zone or a geographical region. In either case, when we have configured the initial deployment, then the topology is able to monitor and automatically detect complex event patterns and therefore trigger a reactive reconfiguration cycle. We extend this cycle through the propagation of certain metrics to a time series DB, which is used as a training model for the forecasting module. The forecasting module is able to issue certain forecasted values for metrics that are used in order to proactively start a reconfiguration cycle of the application deployment. In order to do so, Morphemic is able to accept the plugging in of different forecasting methods that are essentially materializing forecasters. And we are experimenting and we are accepting different statistical forecasting methods, for example, the polynomial regression algorithms, or machine learning forecasting methods, for example, Bayesian neural networks, or even hybrid time series forecasting methods that are based both on machine learning and statistical methods for, let's say, optimizing the potential predictions that our system is able to issue. Example is the ES hybrid, which has won also the M4 competition. So our system is able to, first of all, monitor in an efficient manner all the necessary metrics that should be used in order to trigger reconfigurations. And based on different forecasters, we are able to evaluate and keep the predictions per metric that make more sense, that are more accurate, by using a different number of key indicators, like the mean absolute percentage error, the root mean square error, and so on, in order before issuing certain predictions. Now, according to these predictions, we have a severity-based SLO violation detector that considers considers different techniques around the rate of change, the probability confidence, or the distance of threshold before publishing a trigger that will start a proactive reconfiguration cycle. In order to do so, it considers two-dimensional, three-dimensional, or multi-dimensional spaces in order to position the perceived or the detected predicted metrics according to the number of metrics that are used in the defined service level objectives. And in this way, we summarize the main aspects of this forecasting module of the Morphemic platform. So thank you very much for your attention.
With this, we conclude our presentation. And from Yanis, from me, from all the rest of the consortium team, we would like to invite you to follow us on our Facebook page, Morphemic Project, on our LinkedIn page, Morphemic Project again, and of course on our Twitter account, Morphemic. And if you like, you can visit also our website where we update news frequently, and you can ask us questions and enjoy conversation with the team there. With that, we also want to thank you, the OW2 team, for this invitation, and to all the audience who have listened to us. And see you soon on this social network.
And one last thought before the award ceremony. This last talk of the conference is given by Frank Villaume of Microsoft. In this presentation, Frank raises to the challenge of demonstrating that a GAFAM can actually provide an open cloud by referring to the old OSI model.
Hello and welcome for this new session of OW2 2021. This session is a demonstration around Azure as an open cloud. It might be a little bit baldy from my side to do the demonstration, but let's try. First of all, small introduction about myself. My name is Frank Villaume. I'm working obviously at Microsoft. And I'm a team leader of Azure Architect working for Microsoft France and focus on partners. This demonstration will reuse, or at least we will try to follow as much as possible, the OZ model. Remember that the OZ model has 7 layers, then let's go to have 7 facts as a demonstration on Azure as an open cloud. Let's go for the first fact. First of all, you can drive Azure with the tool of your choice. You're not binded to any proprietary tool. Obviously, you can use a native open source toolbox provided by Microsoft. The CLI written Python is using MIT license. PowerShell is available using Apache2. Bicep, which is DSL on top of ARM, which can provide you the ability to deploy Azure resource. And Bicep is also an open source license. If you don't like this native open source toolbox, well, you can stick with other open source tools. Ansible, Terraform, Chef, Puppet, whatever the tool open source, it usually works. A lot of documentation is available. A lot of people I know works with Terraform or Ansible. We have a lot of partners using Puppet to drive Azure. Other options you have? Well, you can pilot Azure with your favorite CI/CD tools. Well, for sure, Azure DevOps can be used, or you can use Azure GitHub, GitLab, Jenkins, whatever, add your solution here. You can find a way, and there is options to drive Azure with the CI/CD tools. Last option, well, you can stick with the Azure portal. It's your choice. You're not binded or you're not forced to use one tool. Here, it's completely open. Second fact, you want to use Azure, then you have to stick with open standard protocols or formats. Exit any proprietary protocols. You want to talk with Azure Active Directory? Well, you have to talk OpenID or SAML. You want to talk with Event Hub or IoT Hub? You can talk HTTP, MQTT, IMQP. All these protocols are open, standard, fully documented. It's working by default. You want to store data within Azure? Well, we're reusing open standard formats. Apache Avro, NFS, Parquet are among the formats that we support. Then here, another demonstration, Azure only use open standards protocols and formats. Third, Azure can execute any technology you want or you need, any language. well, I could build a long list of open source language available and supported. Java is among them, PHP obviously, Python, C#, any. And Microsoft provide Azure SDK, an open source license for a lot of language, and it's still evolving every day. C# with .NET is supported, JavaScript, Java, Go, name your language. Azure also supports any operating system. Well, any is maybe a little bit too overwhelmed, but it is just an example here. Linux distribution, BSD, Windows, even macOS is about to come, but it is already available on Azure DevOps and GitHub's Actions. You can run containers anywhere. We even support AS400 or Cray. Azure can execute any technology. You pick the technology you need or you like, and Azure can execute it. Fourth, Azure provides open source managed services, meaning that the managed services Microsoft provides through Azure are built reusing open source components or open source provided by the editor. That way we respect the editor business model. And if it's coming from the community, then we do not fork the community solution. We work directly with the community upstream, or directly with the editor upstream, always. It's very mandatory as a policy within Microsoft to work with the community or with the editor and not forking the solution. I've listed here on this slide few examples. I could put the name of every component here, but let's say, okay, the majors are here. Some of the managed services reuse the name directly, such as Azure Database for PostgreSQL, then you have PostgreSQL directly, or sometimes we rebrand it. Azure PeerView is Apache Atlas. If you look at Azure Application Gateway v2, then it's Nginx. If you're looking at Azure Web Application Firewall, then it's based on Apache Mod Security, and the list is long. So here, Azure provide open source managed services based on open source component, respecting the business model and helping the community to have a new features directly upstream. Fifth, well, some part, and I would say probably the more important part of Azure infrastructure is open source. Azure is relying on open source. Let's take some example here. Bing Search, we do rely on Kubernetes. So Bing Search is using heavily Kubernetes beneath. The heart of the network intelligence of Azure is using Sonic. Sonic is a Debian-based project available for everyone, and it's the solution we use and we built, and today it's reused massively in every switch and so on, and network provider. And Sonic is driving the network intelligence in Azure. Let's say you provide let's say you create a virtual network within Azure. When you create a virtual network, first you use the CLI, the open source CLI. And these open source CLI discuss with the fabric of Azure using API. And then the request goes to Sonic, and Sonic just provision everything. That way you have your virtual network. Other example is, Azure SQL database. It's used heavily Service Fabric. Service Fabric is an open source solution to run containers as Kubernetes can do it. But Service Fabric was a homemade solution, and it has been provided as open source. Or another example is that Microsoft built his own distro, his own Linux distro named Mariner, and it's used as host for managed services. For example, let's say you want to deploy Azure Front Door. Azure Front Door is a solution on the network part. Well, then when you provision Azure Front Door, underneath it will run on Azure Mariner. It's the Linux distro, as I said. So this is quite important to know that Azure infrastructure is partially or mostly open source or rely on open source. Next fact, the hardware that is used by Azure has been released and continuously released within the Open Compute project. Yes, we use open source hardware. There is 3 major projects that we are working on. Olympus is the specification of the hardware that we are reusing within Azure data centers. And it is a completely modular system. You can reuse some part of it, etc., etc. And it's available. Second project is Cerberus. Cerberus is an hardware compliant for security. Okay, the idea is to host directly the security within the hardware. The third one is Denali. Denali is an interface for SSD. It's really help to build a GBOD based on SSD. Last fact is, regions are open to public. I invite you to set up a visit physically, while obviously waiting for post-COVID policy, or virtually. Well, thank you for for following this demonstration, and I hope you like it. I'm here on the chat to answer any questions. Thank you for listening, thank you for attending, and thank you for your contribution. Bye.
Typing. Now we are a few seconds. Right, so we are now at the last session of this conference. I hope you've enjoyed it so far, and let's finishing with a big bang. So this is the award ceremony and closing session of the conference. So I'm now pleased to kick off the OW2con 21 Best Project Award ceremony. The OW2con 21 Best Project Award is a distinction granted to OW2 projects in recognition of particular achievements. This year, we have 3 awards: Community, Market, and Technology. The Community Award is a recognition of significant engagement to grow a community and open the project to third-party contributors. The Market Award goes to projects with significant market adoption and significant commercial achievements. And the Technology Award encourages projects leveraging or integrating state-of-the-art or leading-edge technologies. So without further ado, let's start with the Community Award. This project was created single-handedly by one developer to share his work. As the project proved useful to others, it became more and more popular. As an example, an application based on the project was launched in 2009 and is now translated in 27 languages and earned more than 700 stars on GitHub. So, for this outstanding achievement and the impeccable attitude, the OW2 Best Project Community Awards goes to the LDAP Toolbox project.
Hi.
And I think we have Clément with us, who
yes.
obviously had not listened to the instructions. So Clément, do you want to say a word with us?
Yes, I want to thank, of course, OW2 for this award. Thank you. I would like to say that this is indeed at first a personal project, but that a lot of people in the community have helped. And I would like to thank some of them, like David Coutader, like Philippe Lewin, like Maxime Besson, Paul Curie, Julien Védrine, and a lot of people that are working with me in Vortex, because Vortex, which is my company, is helping me a lot to contribute to such project. So thanks a lot, and hope this project is useful to a lot of people in the world.
Congratulations, Clément. And thank you. And thank you for your contribution to OW2. Much appreciated. And now we're moving on to the Market Award. This project is distributed worldwide and claims more than 100 custom implementations on all continents. This position has been achieved and keeps growing despite direct competition with rivals with much greater financial support. And all this thanks to many satisfied customers and strong word of mouth for the products and the services supporting it. So for this impressive performance in the face of adversity, the OW2con Best Project Market Award goes to XWiki. And I think we have Ludovic Dubost and Clément Aubin with us in this ceremony. So Ludovic and Clément, if you want to say a word, congratulations.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much, OW2. We're very proud to have this award because it's actually one of the drivers of our company to focus a lot on our customers, and that a project is not successful if it doesn't have lots of users, but also customers that believe in it and also fund it. And we're spending a very significant amount of our time working with these customers. And so we're very proud. We want to thank all these customers that have worked, and so in particular, in this case, we have candidated to this award based on one important project also that we had last year, which is for the Lenovo. And I wanted to bring in Clément, one of our account managers, and that works every day with clients, and also show the very important work that these account managers and also our developers that are working on these projects are doing. Because without these customers, we would not be able to fund XWiki. And so, Clément, you can say a few words about this importance.
Yeah, thank you, Ludovic. Indeed, so you reminded quite well the importance of being able to drive projects that go successfully. And for last year, indeed, we had quite an experience with Lenovo, migrating them from a support platform used by around 7,000 users daily to a solution that is based in XWiki. So we got to work with them during about 3 months in order to do this important migration. So yeah, thank you, and I would like to thank again OW2 for the award and also the great event that we got this year.
Well, congratulations, thank you for the kind words, and well done XWiki. So now we can move to the technology award, and this technology award goes. Right, and this project is a high-tech product developed by a global community using widely accepted quality standards backed by both industry and governments. It's written in C and Lua, and it has an objective of long-term maintainability, and the developers guarantee that it will compile and work in 20 years' time from now. So for this exceptional realization, the OW2 OW2con Best Project Technology Awards goes to Zenroom. And I think we have Andrea Dintino online with us. Andrea, if you could turn your camera on, and you're welcome.
Yes, we do. Yes. Thank you very much. I was busy typing my name in the chat so that people can see who I am. Thank you very much for being here. Would be much nicer if we had the chance to meet in person, which I hope is going to happen next year. Briefly about Zenroom, it's we call it crypto virtual machine. It's a virtual machine in the sense of Java. So it executes code in a completely sealed environment. It is centered on cryptography. We have implemented several cryptographic flows. We have just released a paper that allows people to do multi-party computation or multi-signature. It's completely multi-platform, so it runs on any devices you could think of. And it's true, since it's written in C and it has no external dependencies, we guarantee it will run in at least for 20 years. So for as long as there will be a C compiler, the software will run.
Nice, very, very impressive. And we're very proud to give you this technology award to Zenroom. Well,
thank you very much.
So, thank you, Andrea. Thank you, Ludovic. Thank you, Clément. And so this concludes the award ceremony, the OW2con 21 Best Project Award ceremony, and also this concludes the conference. So, what else? I'm not going to speak for too long. It's been a couple of intense days. Thank you to our speakers. Thank you to our sponsors. Thank you to you, the attendees. And I hope you've enjoyed the conference. So keep healthy and safe. and we look forward to seeing you again next year for OW2con 22 in real life this time. Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.